The inevitable finally occurred during the Canadian Grand Prix as both McLaren drivers came together, so who was at fault? I think you know the answer to that. It's pretty simple, but let's dive into that and more as we review the Canadian Grand Prix. I say that and more, but in all honesty, not much really happened in this race for the first 60 or so laps, as it was kind of all setting up that final 10-lap sprint to the end of the race. We had a small variation in strategy at the very beginning as both Norris and Leclerc decided to go on the hard tyres to offset themselves in strategy, whilst the rest of the top runners ran on the medium tyres to start with. Russell executed a great pole lap on Saturday, taking pole for the second time in a row for the Canadian Grand Prix, and led through turn 1-2 after he got a great start. And basically, he never looked back from this stage on, as he just seemed to have the race pace over anyone challenging from behind him. Verstappen came through in second place, whilst Piastri lost third to Antonelli, who made a great move around the outside of turn 1, which turned to the inside of turn 2, and then back to the inside for turn 3. Piastri decided to play it smart here, not fight it too hard, and look at the championship position. There was no point in getting in a lap 1, turn 1 tangle with Antonelli. And again, Antonelli made a great start. It was a great move, and he deserved to take P3 with that move. But of course, I did appreciate how Oscar managed to play it much safer. From then on, it was a fairly conventional two-stop race. You had drivers trying the undercut, but no one was really close enough to make it work. Of course, you had Leclerc and Norris who offset themselves with that hard tyre start, which gave themselves a tyre advantage for the rest of the race. And whilst that enabled Norris to really fight back in that final stint, Leclerc and the Ferrari just didn't have the race pace, and he kind of fell away by the time it got to the end of the race. So again, not much really happened for that first 60 laps, so I won't be covering much of it, and we'll get straight into the back end of this race in the final stint. Russell had great pace in this final stint, as he had for the rest of the race, so basically drove away from the chasing pack. So it basically became a fight for P2, with Verstappen there, Antonelli, Piastri and Norris catching them all. Piastri looked pretty close to overtaking Antonelli a couple of times, but then they ran into blue flags and Antonelli was able to make his way through the traffic much better than Piastri was, who lost a lot of time and fell out of DRS range. At the same time, Norris navigated it quite well and managed to get himself into the DRS range of Piastri and start putting pressure on. Piastri did eventually manage to get back into the DRS range of Antonelli, but it wasn't enough, and on lap 67, Norris sent a move into the hairpin, which was brilliant to watch as it was late and Piastri never saw it coming. However, he couldn't make the move stick, and they ran side by side on the exit and down the back straight. Piastri on the inside, Norris on the outside, with Norris getting a slight tow from Antonelli ahead. They went into the final chicane, and I thought this was the moment the collision was going to happen. But Norris played it safe, broke early and set himself up for a good exit, whilst Piastri broke late, took the inside line, but was slightly compromised, so got a worse exit. You then had the run down the front straight. As Piastri had a slower exit, Norris was able to drag up nicely behind him, and Piastri eventually covered the inside line after really moving over from the center of the track. Norris followed him here, and I think he just thought a gap would open up on the inside. As it just appeared on the TV inexplicably, he drove straight into the back of Piastri and hit that inside wall. As I was saying, I think he thought Piastri would just move over slightly to the right as the track curves to the right and a gap would open up. However, Piastri is smarter than that, and he made sure he never left a gap on that inside, so Norris just ended up misjudging it and driving straight into the back of Oscar. I appreciate Norris getting straight on the radio and accepting blame for this incident, because you can't put this on anyone apart from him, and he knows that. He accepted the blame, and I think that's really going to help the team move on and just avoid any drama that would have occurred if he had started complaining about Oscar on the radio. I did see some Lando Norris fans on social media saying that Oscar should have left Lando space, but Lando wasn't alongside. Oscar's entitled to move once across the track, which he did to the inside, and he's not entitled to then leave a gap for Lando to drive up the inside. If every driver did that, overtaking would just be incredibly easy and every driver would be making moves up the inside. So comments like that are pretty ridiculous. I did see some team order comments as well, which I can understand a bit more, but this wasn't a fight for first place. They weren't trying to attack Verstappen like they were in Japan. This was a fight for fourth and fifth, and I think wherever possible you should just let the drivers race, which is what McLaren and Andrea Stella said afterwards. So I was happy with the decision not to implement team orders. I think it was the right one, given it was literally only for fourth place at this stage. This incident caused the race to end under safety car, with George Russell winning, followed by Verstappen in P2, Antonelli in P3, and Piastri, who was very lucky to escape without any damage, finished in P4, followed by both Ferraris. This has really set Norris back in the championship fight here, as he's lost 12 points to Piastri and Verstappen gained 18 points on him. So there's still plenty of time left in the season, but these are the types of mistakes that Norris needs to get out of his system, because over the course of a season they add up and will cost him a championship fight like they currently are at the moment. He's by no means out of it. He's still very, very much in this fight, but he can't continue to make mistakes like this. It's similar. Oscar, turn 1, lap 1, played it safe, and even though he lost the spot to Antonelli, he still bagged 12 points. I think Norris should have just played it safer here. Instead of trying to risk a dive up the inside, he should have just gone to the outside. I doubt Oscar would have run him off the track, and maybe he could have set himself up for a switchback on the exit of turn 2. Quickly touching on the Ferraris, they just didn't have the race pace. Hamilton had a lonely race by himself as he ran over a groundhog and lost, I think it was 20 or 50 points of downforce, so he was just by himself the entire race. And Leclerc just fell out of contention as the race went on, especially on that final stint. He just didn't have the pace to catch up. The remaining top 10 was Alonso and Hülkenberg, who both had outstanding races respectively. They both got the maximum out of their car. I thought Alonso was in trouble when he pitted quite early and fell to the back of that long DRS train in the middle, but he made his way through traffic. So it's great to see both drivers get another points finish, and Hülkenberg just delivering absolutely in that car. Things you love to see. It was great to see him get another points finish. The final 2 points paying positions went to Esteban Ocon, who did well to get P9 in that Haas, and then you had Sainz in P10, who I think would have wanted a bit more considering the pace the Williams had earlier in the weekend, but both Williams drivers struggled with engine cooling issues, so both had to tune it back a bit. Alex Albon was very unhappy with his strategy, eventually retired from the race, and Liam Lawson was another retiree. Franco Colapinto showed much better pace this weekend, and I think was quicker than Pierre Gasly, but again couldn't bag points, and Yuki Tsunoda was again once outside of the points. The midfield in this race just kind of got stuck in a really long DRS train. It looked extremely difficult to overtake, and if you got track position, you just seemed to be in a really good spot, and I think a lot of drivers lost out who just happened to lose track position at the wrong time. Overall though, it was a pretty decent race. I think I'd give it a 6 out of 10. The end really made it much more interesting. The start of the race I think was pretty boring from my perspective. And overall, my opinion on Canada has not changed. I really don't like it as a circuit. So yeah, 6 out of 10. Let me know what you would rate the race out of 10 down below. Again, we have a couple weeks off now before we head to Austria, one of my favorite circuits on the track. It always produces great racing. But thank you guys so much for tuning in, and have a great rest of your day.